morning. My name's Stephanie. I'm on the team here at Neighborhood. And there is one question that I hate more than any other question. And it's a question I actually get asked regularly. I got asked 5 times just this week. And it's a question that you've probably been asked multiple times in your life as well. And that question is, can you spare some change? Can you spare some change? I mean, it's a simple question. It's usually asked by someone that looks like they don't have a lot to someone that looks like they have more. And for about 90% of us, the question is mostly rhetorical. I mean, if I spared a couple of bucks, it probably wouldn't change my life all that much. So the question isn't really, can I spare some change, but will I? Will I give some money to this person that looks like maybe they need it more? And the 3 obvious answers to this question are yes, no, or pretend that I didn't hear them or see them and just keep walking. And I have done all of those on multiple occasions. And it doesn't matter what answer I give, after the encounter, I always feel lousy. And this is why. I mean, imagine you are in the grocery store parking lot and you get stopped and somebody asks you the question, can you spare some change? We'll say it's a really good day, I'm feeling especially compassionate, and so I say, sure. And I hand them a couple of bucks, I smile, they smile, we both walk away happy. I feel like a good person, I'm generous. I mean, I'm basically the Good Samaritan in real life. And even if you've never read the Bible, you've probably heard some version of the Good Samaritan story. See, it was a story that Jesus made up. A guy asked him a question. He said, what's the greatest commandment? Like, what's the one thing God wants us to do with our lives? And Jesus said, well, love God and love your neighbor. And the guy asked a follow-up question. He's like, well, who is my neighbor? Who counts? And so Jesus tells him a story. He says there's a Jewish guy, and he's walking along the road, and he gets robbed and beaten and left for dead. And then 2 Jewish guys who are religious leaders walk by, and they do nothing. There's a 3rd guy that comes. He's a Samaritan, which is a people group that the Jews hated. And yet he stops, helps this Jewish guy, takes him to the next town, and then pays an innkeeper to nurse him back to health. And then Jesus turns to the guy, and he says, well, who was a neighbor? And the answer is obvious. He says, well, the one that had mercy on him. And Jesus said, go and do likewise. Like, go and do that. And here I was. I saw somebody in need. I stopped. I helped. I did it. I did what Jesus is calling us to do. I lived beyond myself, which is how we say it at Neighborhood. I mean, I feel great. They feel great. This is all great. And it does feel really good to say yes. Sure, I'm out a couple of bucks, but it feels so good. And it keeps feeling good as long as you walk away and you never see that person again. Or you don't see what happens next. But suppose I go to the grocery store again the next day because I forgot the one thing I went there for. And so I see the same person and they ask me the same question. It felt so good the first time, the second time I say yes, and I give them a couple of bucks. And suppose I go a 3rd day or a 4th day, and every time they see me coming, they head straight for me and they ask me the same question. I mean, pretty soon I start to resent the fact that they come looking for me every day. And maybe even a 2nd person starts showing up with them. Maybe even a 3rd person. And I start to resent it. I mean, am I supposed to say yes to every person that asks? I mean, eventually I'm going to run out of money or compassion or time. I can't help everybody. So I just change grocery stores so I can avoid them and avoid the question altogether. See, what started out as something so great turned into this never-ending cycle of dependency that just feels awful. It doesn't feel so good anymore. How did that happen? Or maybe one day, just because I'm curious, I stick around and I watch to see what they do with the money. They don't head into the grocery store at all. In fact, they leave. And I feel manipulated and taken advantage of. I start to assume the worst about them. I mean, they're probably an addict. This is going to feed an addiction rather than their stomach. And I vow, I am never going to do this again. You cannot trust people. And I end up leaving feeling bitter and resentful, not happy and compassionate anymore. And sure, you might be thinking, well, it's not my responsibility to care about what they do with the money. That's up to them and God. I just have to give it and let it go. And sure, that's true. I cannot control the other person. And my intentions might be pure, but if my impact is actually harmful, should I keep on doing it? See, when you really start to think about it, yes ends up being a much more complicated answer. There's a book called When Helping Hurts. And the authors did research on charity in 60 different countries across the globe to find out, what kind of help actually helps people move forward? And what they found is that relationships like this, where there are givers and receivers, they're one-way relationships, that ultimately those relationships are doomed to fail every time. Because eventually, the giver gets exhausted. They start to feel used, taken advantage of, and so they stop giving. And they never want to help anybody again because it was not fun. And the receiver, it felt so good that somebody was helping them, and then that person just stops. And they feel rejected, and they vow that they're never going to trust anybody again. That both people end up walking away feeling hurt and worse off than before they even met. And when you realize this, then you realize that yes turns out to be a really dangerous answer. And once you've been burned by saying yes, then the logical response becomes no. No way. There's no way of knowing if I'm actually helping or hurting the other person. Are they really going to use this money to help them, or am I just enabling them to stay on the streets and not get real help? I don't know if I'm going to be helping or hurting them or me, so it's better just to not help anyone. Because if yes is the wrong answer, then no must be the right one, right? And so I say no, and I walk away. And then the words of Jesus echo in my head. Jesus said things like, I was hungry, and you gave me something to eat. I was thirsty, you gave me something to drink. Whatever you did for one of the least of these brothers and sisters of mine, you did for me. And James, the brother of Jesus, when he was teaching people what it means to follow Jesus, he said this. He said, what good is it, my brothers and sisters, if someone claims to have faith but has no deeds? Can such faith save them? Suppose a brother or sister is without clothes and daily food. If one of you says to them, go in peace, keep warm and well fed, but does nothing about their physical needs, what good is that? See, when I say no, I feel like the biggest hypocrite ever. Jesus is pretty clear. We are supposed to stop and help people in need. And when I say no, I immediately feel guilty. I feel heartless. I feel like a bad person. And I don't want to feel like a bad person, so my mind immediately goes into justification mode. That I'm not a bad person. They're probably a bad person. They're probably an addict. They're probably not even homeless. They're just manipulating me, and I come up with all kinds of judgment. Now this person I don't even know, to justify my response of saying no and still stay the good guy in this equation. And every time I say no, my heart gets a little bit harder, my judgment gets a little bit worse, and I don't feel at all like I'm loving my neighbor. So if yes is the wrong answer and no is the wrong answer, then maybe no answer is the way to go. After all, when I see people in need, I get kind of overwhelmed. It's awkward. I don't know what to say. So it's just easier to just say nothing and keep on walking. I hate when I just miss the light when I'm driving and I'm stuck at the intersection and then I'm eyeball to eyeball with the guy on the corner with the sign. And he's literally 3 feet from my face, and I just pretend the window isn't see-through. And I just stare straight ahead because I don't know what to do. I don't want to say yes. I don't want to say no. So I just don't say anything. But have you ever felt invisible? Like you didn't matter? Like nobody cared about you? I mean, imagine standing on a corner watching car after car go by, and people pretend you don't even exist. I mean, that's got to do something to you. That's got to feel awful. So how could I do that to another person and still call myself a kind and generous person? See, no answer, that can't be the right answer either. So if yes is the wrong answer, and no is the wrong answer, and no answer is the wrong answer, then what answer are we supposed to give? This is why I hate this question. I hate it. There's no right answer. I was listening to another pastor from a different church a while back, and he had a story about this. He said, I was in a gas station, and a guy came up to me and asked me, hey, do you have some change? And I just said, sorry, I don't have any cash. And the guy asked a follow-up question. He's like, well, could you buy me something to eat inside? And he really didn't want to, but he felt like God was telling him, go buy this guy a sandwich. And he couldn't shake the feeling, and so he went and he did it. And then he got back in his car, and his two kids had all kinds of questions. Like, Dad, who was that guy? Why'd you buy him something to eat? How come you didn't buy us something? And he had to explain, I don't know who that guy was, but God knows who he is. And God told me to buy him a sandwich, so I did. But today I was the one that God used to show him that he cared about him. And it was this teachable moment for his kids, that all people matter. And it was this defining moment for him. But I sat there and I thought, well, that's a sweet story, but I know that rarely does any good. What good is that going to do? And if I know that rarely does anyone any good, surely God must know that too. So why would God tell him to go and do this? And so I went home and I prayed about it. I was like, God, did you really say that? Or is he just delusional? And this is what I heard. That underneath this dreaded question are actually two other questions. And the first one is, do I matter? See, the person asking for change is also asking the question, do I matter? Does anybody care what happens to me? And my response to them tells them either yes, they do, or no, you don't. See, how I answer that question is almost more important than what I say. Do I treat them with dignity and respect, or do I brush past them and ignore them? This is actually true of every interaction we have with another human being. Everyone is asking the question, do I matter? An eye contact, a smile, an acknowledgement of them, introducing yourself, asking their name, all of that validates the humanness in the other person. In fact, it makes us equals. We're not givers and beggars. We're equals. They're asking the question, do I matter? But there's a second question, and I think it's a question that we rarely ask. But if we stop at just the first question, then I think we miss something. See, the second question is, well, now what? What can I do to make sure that this person never has to ask that question again? Because to ask somebody for change, that's humiliating. That's got to do something to people too. That if I truly want to love my neighbor, then what could I do to make sure that they never have to ask that question again? And that second question, that is a difficult question. Because in order to find the solution, then we really need to understand the problem. We got to know why somebody is in the situation that they're in order to know what's really going to help them get out of it. And that takes time. Probably more time than I have in the parking lot or before the light turns green. And so you might be thinking, well, whoa, that's a great question, but I'm not up for all that. I can't do that with every single person that asks me, can I spare some change? And I can't either. I am not a superhero. I can't fix everyone's problems, and I can't do it for every single person that asks me. But thankfully, I don't think that's what Jesus is calling us to do. Thankfully, it's not all up to me to fix everything. I don't think God is calling us to do it all, or even to do it all alone. I mean, the Good Samaritan in Jesus' story didn't even do it all alone. I mean, yes, he stopped and he helped, but then he paid somebody else to nurse the guy back to health. I mean, he was on the road. He was on a journey. He had a place he needed to be. But he did what he could. But he didn't have to do it all or do it all alone. He just did what he could. And I think that's what Jesus is calling us to do. And I don't have to do it all or do it all alone. I just have to do something. And thankfully, we live in a city that has some amazing organizations that are actually tackling these really difficult issues, these complicated situations that people are in. There's whole teams of people that have devoted themselves to listening to people's stories and figuring out how to work with them to overcome the challenges that they're facing. And our church actually partners with just a few of them. And they are awesome organizations. And what I love about our partners is that they are led by people from our own church. There are people from neighborhood that are choosing to do something. That they've thought through these complicated answers and they have figured out solutions that show people that they matter and helps them move forward in life. So they never have to ask these kinds of questions again. And Paul and Shelley Outfleet are a couple in our church. And a couple of years ago, they learned that there's a lot of kids in our city that are sleeping on the floor. They don't have a bed. They thought, well, that's not right. I mean, every kid needs a good night's sleep in order to have a healthy life and even be able to concentrate in school. I mean, it's going to be really hard for kids to move forward in life if they can't even sleep. And so they started a chapter of Sleep in Heavenly Peace, which is an organization that builds beds for kids. And they're an awesome organization. And Karen Cardoza is another member of our church, and she herself was a teen mom. And she worked and struggled to get ends meet for her and her son, but if it wasn't for the people that surrounded her, she never would have made it. And she knows that not every teenager has that kind of support. So she became the director of Young Lives. And they partner teen parents with one-on-one mentors, provide resources and fun and supplies, everything they need to help these teens and their littles move forward in life. And Adrienne Hillman goes to our church. And a few years back, she noticed that the number of people experiencing homelessness was growing rapidly in our city. And instead of complaining about it, she founded Salt and Light. And they are building tiny homes, a whole community of them, so that people experiencing homelessness in our county can have a roof over their heads and a community that cares about them. Because for most of them, rejection and isolation is a disease that runs even deeper than poverty. And poverty is a huge issue in our county. We have one of the highest poverty rates in the country. And so 15 years ago, our church asked the question, well, what could we do? What could we do to partner with people in our city to solve this issue? And we adopted Houston School. And we partner with parents to make life better for kids through Halloween treats and Easter baskets and mentoring through lunch buddies. At Christmas, we set up the Christmas store where parents get to come and buy brand new gifts at reduced prices. And in all of that, we found that we are helping partner with parents to create these opportunities, but many of them are working 1, 2, or 3 jobs and still experiencing poverty. And so we asked the question, well, what could we do to help them move forward, to move out of poverty? What can we do to help that next generation move out of this? And so last year, we started the Neighborhood Degree Project. And we partner with our former Houston school kids that are now in high school, and we help them apply for college or trade school. And our goal is to get them to and through a degree program so that they come out on the other side with lots of opportunities to live into their full potential without any restrictions. And we believe the ripple effect of this could be huge. It could change the trajectory not only of their life, but their siblings, their family, their neighborhood, our whole community. And Santiago is one of our staff members, and he's helped out a lot at Houston School through soccer leagues and lunch buddies, and he said, you know what? I could do more to mentor youth like this. I could do more to help them develop a positive sense of self that could propel them into a positive future. And so we got a team together, and they started a nonprofit this year called Braveheart. And they're doing character development through sports and fitness. And Micah is another guy at our church. He took a job at the Creative Center, and he partners with adults with developmental disabilities. I mean, often they are overlooked and undervalued in our society. But at the Creative Center, their creativity, their abilities, their unique perspectives are highlighted, and they're able to share their art with the world. See, we partner with some amazing organizations that do this really, really well. They're partnering with people because giver-receiver relationships are doomed to fail. But relationships that are built on partnership, where both people are contributing what they have, whether that's money or time or skills or ideas, when both people are contributing, those kinds of relationships are sustainable. When both people give, they get to both be givers and both receivers. And it highlights the dignity and that everybody has something to give. And those kinds of relationships can actually change us. And they can even change the people around us. See, if I give $5 to a stranger and walk away, my heart doesn't really change all that much. And their life doesn't really change that much either. But if I give $5 or maybe $40 to Salt and Light and go and eat a meal with somebody experiencing homelessness, my perspective shifts a little bit. My empathy can grow. That maybe I realize we're not all that different. And they might realize that as well and not feel so alone and decide that maybe it's worth it to try one more time. Maybe I know of a friend that has a job opening, and I connect them. Then my friend gets an employee, they get a sustainable job, and then this person is not a beggar anymore. They are contributing, they are needed. There is so much purpose and value in that. That when we partner with people, it has the power to change us and to change the people around us. And these are the kinds of relationships that our partners are creating with people every day. So, my question for you today is, can you spare some change to see some real change happen in our city? I mean, specifically, can you spare $39.95 to give to our community partners? And 100%, everything given today goes directly to them to continue the life-changing work that they're already doing. See, I think it's worth your $40, or maybe a little less, or maybe a lot more. I think it's worth $40 to see kids go to college, to see adults that are usually overlooked, valued and highlighted. I think it's worth it to see teen moms and youth mentored, to have a community of people that have a roof over their heads, and to make sure that every child has a bed. I think that's worth $40. See, it's not my job to fix everything or to do it for everyone, but we all can do something. And maybe your something today is given $39.95. Or maybe it's giving your time with our community partners. We have some opportunities this week that you can sign up at their tables and volunteer with them. Go check them out. I mean, my hope is just that you do something, that you find some way to do something so that the next time somebody asks you, can you spare some change? You can say, I already do. My spare change is going to help teen moms or build tiny homes or buy beds. I mean, my spare time is going to mentor youth, help kids apply for college, or do projects at the Creative Center. I mean, my spare change is making real change in the world. Now, I realize you probably shouldn't say that to the guy standing on the corner with the sign. The answer to his or her question is a tricky one. But I think the answer is simple. If you're a Jesus follower, I think it's simple. The answer is always yes, but it's yes with an asterisk. As the authors of When Helping Hurts write, they say that the Bible does not command mindless generosity, but rather the use of wisdom and prudence that keeps the end goal in mind, the restoration of people to what they were created to be. I think the answer is always yes, but whatever answer you choose to give, I hope that it does two things. I hope that it shows people that they matter and that it helps people move forward in life. And there's a million different right answers to those two questions. So whatever answer you give, I hope it does that. And that's all I know. So now it's up to Jordan. I don't know. How do you answer this?
Well, thank you, Stephanie. I'm here to do the infomercial today. I am here to give you a few steps. We are so excited to be celebrating Friendsgiving with you this morning. And there's a few things we want you to do when this service ends. First of all, if you would like to give a gift of $39.95, maybe more, maybe less to our community partners, there's two ways you can do that. One, grab the card on the seat next to you or underneath you. Maybe you're sitting on it right now and you just don't even realize it. There's a QR code on the back. You can scan that. It'll take you to our website, our secure web portal, where you can give directly to our partners. Just select Friendsgiving from the drop-down list and give your gift. Also, there's a Friendsgiving table outside after the service if you would like to give in that way. Again, it's not necessarily about the amount, it's about participation. It's about us saying yes to making a difference in our community, sharing the love of Jesus with Visalia. Now, there's another thing we want you to do. At neighborhood, we can't help but throw a party, so we want you to grab some pie and say hi to our community partners. There is a ton of pumpkin pie out there. Grab 1, 2, 3, maybe 4 slices, pile it up with some whipped cream, however you like to do, and then go meet our community partners this morning. Find out about the work they're doing in our community. Maybe sign up to volunteer or get more information. Last, before I send you out, I want to tell you that the bar has already been raised pretty high this morning. Just before I popped up on stage, I heard a story from one of our NC Kids workers who told me that there's a 6-year-old girl this morning who decided to give her entire collected allowance for Friendsgiving to our community partners. $49 a 6-year-old gave to help out people in our community. I don't know if you know this, but $49 to a 6-year-old is like $4,000. So neighborhood, we have some big shoes to fill this morning. Hey, before you head out, our prayer team is going to be hanging out over here. We would love to pray with you if you need prayer today. The next lounge is out there if you're new and would like to grab a Discover NC box or take a next step with us. And last but certainly not least, our giving boxes are in the back. Thank you for giving to the mission of Neighborhood Church. We truly couldn't do what we do without your generosity. Sound good? Let's go grab some pie and say hi to our community partners.